He's one of the most decorated pilots in U.S. history. Bob Little flew 68 combat missions during World War II and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Well, I fortunately had quite a bit of training because I flew fighters and what we call a fighter school. You go down to a base in Florida, in my case, at Venice, Florida, and fly P-40s. Well, that was a pretty good airplane. Old tired P-40. But anyway, you learn to fly a P-40 and dogfight. And then came an opportunity to go to Key Field in Meridian, Mississippi, and take a reconnaissance training, fly P-51s. And that was the ultimate. So that's what I did.
Even with scoring high marks during the accelerated fighter school training, Bob Little was surprised to learn that his goal to pilot the P-51 overseas would be delayed.
I shot a pretty good score in aerial gunnery, so they kept me over to be an instructor for a month. Short-term deal, but anyway, I didn't get to go overseas with a bunch of guys I'd been flying with. So that was kind of a loser, except these were great people, and a couple of my good friends are the same bunch. There were 4 of us, and we were held over to be P-51 gunnery instructors.
But it wasn't long before the 20-year-old was piloting the P-51 in the European theater.
So it was a big thrill to fly P-51s. The airplane flew well. It had higher performance than anything I'd flown. Well, it was the top performing fighter for U.S. I flew recce missions, which are low altitude observations, and I had the camera installed in the airplane, take pictures of things of note.
Those strategic missions were key to the U.S. air power and required tactical maneuvering skills.
You jinked. We call it jinking. That's just turning. And you don't fly a straight and level path for more than a few seconds because they'll track you with their anti-aircraft guns and get on you and have much better chance of hitting you. I never got hit. Some of my buddies did. I mean, quite a few of them, actually. One time, right at the end of the war, I think it was in northern Italy, flying up a valley, and clouds covered the mountains on both sides, so you're kind of in a trap. And the map I had, I was following a railroad to see if there was any traffic. And I came up to a solid wall. The railroad went into the side of a mountain and disappeared. And so I had to do a pretty tight turnaround. I had a wingman who had to do a tighter turnaround. That was probably a pretty close one, but we both got out of there.
After his tour of duty, returning to civilian life was a challenge for this American hero.
It was a serious transition because he'd been swashbuckling all across Europe and shooting at everything that moved. And then I had to finish college. That was a grind. I made almost straight A's for a year and a half in college in engineering. And then that was before I went in the service. I came back and I had trouble making B's.
In 1948, armed with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Texas A&M and knowing how to fly, he was offered a job with McDonnell Aircraft.
Went over to little bitty McDonnell Aircraft at the time One of my friends had told me about, because I didn't know anything about them. I ended up going to work as an entry-level engineer for McDonnell, not as a pilot, but fortunately, there was a National Guard outfit right across the field flying P-51s. So I raced over there and joined up and put my uniform back on and started flying P-51s in my spare time. That's like a country club. I mean, that's pretty good going. You get to fly what you want to fly in your spare time. It was a good job. You knew who to go to get answers that were achievable and get help when you needed help. And damn near everybody was an engineer. So it was a great experience. Smart guys all around you.
And working with the iconic Mr. Mac?
He was a real character and a very smart man. I really liked the guy. He could focus on something and make it happen. That all worked out, and became a test pilot at McDonnell Aircraft.
His first aircraft to test was the F-2H Banshee, a single-seat carrier-based jet fighter aircraft deployed by the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps from 1948 to 1961.
That's my first jet. And it was high-performance jet, but it was subsonic. It still wouldn't break the sound barrier. We went through probably a few years of thrashing around, trying to get the right collection of design elements put together so you had a good flying airplane and a safe flying airplane. That took a lot of work, and then you had to test it and prove that, yeah, it didn't pitch up and it didn't do this and it didn't do that.
There's a science to testing a new plane on her maiden voyage, which also involves potential risks.
It's new, different, higher performance, but you've been flying and you've had a lot of experience in fighter airplanes and airplanes that have similar performance characteristics. It's just something you do, you just fly the airplane. You've had a lot of wind tunnel tests. You know what to watch for. You know how it's supposed to fly. I guess you have enough confidence in yourself that you figure you can nurse the thing around, get it back on the ground if you got a problem. You had to think carefully about what you were going to do next. I was pretty good at getting the airplane back on the ground before something really bad happened. No, I never had any big problems, but certainly some of my good friends, test pilots, didn't make it.
The next jet to test was the F-3H-1 Demon, which had a major issue.
Didn't have an engine. That was a problem, big problem. But I never had to bail out. I thought about it a couple of times. And finally, we changed engines and made an airplane out of it.
After the F-101 in 1954, it was the 1-0 Wonder of the F-101B Voodoo in 1957.
That was a real hot rod. It'd blow anything out of the sky.
4 years later was the evolution of the jet that would propel the company's international military demands and become one of the greatest success stories of military aviation.
The F-4 was a Mach 2 airplane. Voodoo was a Mach 1.5 airplane, but it had a lot of punch to it. I can remember the first flight fairly well. It was only 21 minutes because I lost a hydraulic system on takeoff, but we had two systems. It was a good flight, but we'd planned to go supersonic on the first flight. It had already done that on the F-101 a few years before, and so it was a kind of a no-brainer to do it in this airplane. But it didn't work. Didn't work out. That's test flying for you. A lot of times you try to do things and something went wrong. The 5000, of course, flew like a phantom, like it was supposed to fly. And First flight was pretty straightforward. There are no bad things that happened from the controls or in a flight envelope of the airplane. It was pretty darn good airplane.
This airplane also sustained the legendary 46-year career at McDonnell Douglas for Bob Little. The legendary pilot stepped out of the cockpit in 1960 to become manager of the F-4 and eventually rose to director of sales and later vice president of marketing.
We got the right guys in the airplane at the right time, and I set it up for Gordy Graham to run out to over 2.3 Mach number at 50,000 feet, which is nothing else could do that in those days. And he was a great World War II ace, so his word carried a lot of weight. Very helpful.
The F-4 set 16 official U.S. and world records for speed and altitude.
After all those efforts, getting the right people to fly the airplane and evaluate it, we were successful, and the Air Force bought it. Production went up, price went down. Then other countries wanted to upgrade their fleet of combat airplanes, and this was the best one available. And that's how we sold so many.
5,057 Phantoms were built by the McDonnell Aircraft Company division of McDonnell Douglas Corporation in St. Louis.
There's a lot of things in this airplane that I think were developed on and learned from the P-51. It's amazing to me every time I fly this airplane how light it is on the controls. It's a big airplane for a fighter, and it is extremely responsive to the controls, and I think that has a lot to do with going back to the P-51 days and the maneuverability.
Well, there were exciting days, and I enjoyed all of it. Well, it was good.
Today, Bob Little enjoys watching air shows and sharing his aviation experience with the next generation of aviators. Thanks to the Missouri Aviation Historical Society, a meeting between the first F-4 pilot and the last F-4 pilot was made possible.
You were the first F-4 pilot. I'm going to be the last one.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
Well, it's an honor to meet you. This airplane has seen and done a lot of things over the years, and
yeah, it's been a pretty good workhorse.
Did a good job designing her. She still flies great.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Well, I saw you come in and watched your landing and all that.
How'd I do? Is it okay?
Yeah, you did great.
Thank you. This airplane likes to go fast. It likes to go fast.
Yeah.
And it does that very well, that's for sure. But it's a joy to fly, and it's a absolute pleasure to get a chance to meet the man from the beginning. It is something I never thought I'd get the opportunity to do. I never thought I'd get a chance to fly the F-4 ever, let alone get a chance to meet.
But you're flying the F-15 also.
F-16, yes sir.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Sounds like a good combination to me.
How many hours do you have in the F-4?
Oh, not very many, a couple hundred probably.
Okay. That's about what I've got too.
Yeah.
What was your favorite airplane to fly?
Well, really, I flew P-51s during the war, so that's up there. But the F-4's got to be number one.